Dan, were you tapped into like the Nevada legislators when they were, talking about the Senate Bill 1 and they kind of jammed it through in that special session? Were you tapped into that? And what did you think about the way that went down? And especially now, it seems like stuff is up in the air. The Las Vegas Review Journal this week, they just said, oh, it might not be in this corner of the lot. It might be somewhere else in the lot. And everything's still kind of up in the air. And Fisher still doesn't have financing. I'm kind of, what's your read on the situation of Vegas and kind of how it all went down over there?
Well, I was tapped into it likely in the same way you guys were, from our vantage in Oakland, our vantage that was sort of probably at once disbelieving and like kind of aghast watching it all happen. I think my read on it is how that bill was passed is also indicative of lots of shitty things that about how sports operate and about how these deals are done. I mean, the fact that these politicians were just bought off by A's executives, including, I'm forgetting the name of the representative now, but representatives who stood and acted tough on the
Doñate,
floor,
Fabian
yeah,
Doñate, yeah,
and who were challenging Cavill. It turns out all it took was $10,000 to a $10,000 donation campaign or campaign donation to sway him, to persuade him to go back on that. So I think it's I followed it from the vantage of a fan. Of course, I was writing something about it at the time, but looking back on it now, I think there's a lot to be learned from that too. I think that if you look at a lot of these stadium deals, a lot of these public financing deals throughout history, or certainly over the last 30, 40 years, you're going to see a lot of, backroom deals, a lot of this kind of stuff happening, even in the face of politicians, or rather probably aided by politicians who don't really know what it is that they are voting for, right? We saw that happen on social media, or that come to light on social media
yeah,
earlier this year.
yeah.
We don't need to get into that,
No,
but
we talked about that already. Yeah,
yeah, there you go. It's just it,
yeah.
it shines a light on how this stuff happens. And in this case, it was, I think, frankly, pretty gross and disheartening.
My read of the Doñate situation had always been that, it's this guy who knows he's supposed to be standing up and being tough to billionaires, to making sure that they're not screwing them.
Mhm.
But in sort of two ways, like one way, the only way to be tough is to tell them no, and he doesn't want to tell them no. And then the other way is that like he, government is outmatched in a lot of ways here, where the billionaires have a lot of money to pay for lobbyists, and they have a lot of money to pay for consultants, and they have a lot of money for people to write these bills. And in some places like Oakland, there is, legislatures have a lot of resources and power and advisors to help them out make these decisions. But in a lot of other places, like the state of Nevada, Senator Doñate, he doesn't have a staff. He doesn't
Yeah.
have anybody there to tell him what to be. So I think he just sort of picked a thing and was like, I'm going to look tough. And then I don't think it had anything to do with the donation. I think they had 11 lobbyists on the floor, and 7 of them, cornered him and was like, here's why you're wrong to be mad about that. And don't worry, we have these 8 consultants over here who say you're getting an amazing deal. And there's nobody in the room there to say, hey, right now the actual thinking is this is not big money.
And I would add to that, real quick, to your point. They also had passed what? I mean, it was the end of a session that they had
just wanted to go home.
They just wanted to go home at that
And then
point.
there was like a
They were
weekend in
exhausted.
between sessions or something, and that's
Yeah.
kind of when things changed.
So-
Like the
it was
tenor
also during
completely
the-
changed from the before and after that weekend too. Yeah,
It was during the Stanley Cup,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they were winning.
which is
Yeah.
his district. Yeah. Anyway,
No, and so that's a really good point now, and I think it's an important thing to remember too, is that these representatives are people uh, uh, outmatched by the billionaires and their lobbyists, who were also, probably exhausted from, you know, all this was like what the number of bills that they had passed before then, or the number of things that they had looked at, numbered in the hundreds, if not thousands, right? So,
They got to
good
go
point.
year round. I don't understand why they're
And
not
it's a
year
huge
round.
amount of money.
It's
Yeah.
2024.
Well,
How are they still meeting twice, like 3 months every 2 years? I don't
a lot of states are
understand.
like that, Alex. A lot of states are like that.
That's what's kind of opening my eye
Yeah.
too. And then, you
Even
know,
Texas, which is the second largest state and economy in the country, Texas is like that as well.
that's wild.
But yeah, I think it goes back to this sort of this ethos of the citizen legislature, like the House of Burges in Virginia, where like, once every 5 years, the sons of the biggest plantation owners in Virginia would get in their carriages and travel down to wherever the hell they met. I don't think it was Richmond, wherever. I think it's like
Charleston.
Williamsburg or something, like colonial, right? They would travel down there and then have a debate and then wouldn't see each other for 5 years again.